Okay, so for problem number 1, we have 5y plus 1 equals 26. And according to the steps, here's our steps. We're going to circle the variable term and remove the number that is the constant first. All right, so Sebastian, which number are we going to remove? What's the constant here?
1.
And how do I cancel out a positive 1?
With a -1.
Excellent, to both sides. So another good idea would be to separate your problem just for organization. So subtract your 1 from both sides, cancel that out, and then you drop down what's left. 26 minus 1 is 25. And then from here, it's a one-step equation, and we're going to cancel out the 5 by using the division property of equality and divide both sides by 5. And the 5s cancel out to a 1, and 25 divided by 5 means that y equals 5. And if it's a two-step equation, a lot of times you can do a really quick check for your answer using mental math. So since we said y is equal to 5, then our original equation says 5 times what your y is plus 1 equals 26. 5 times 5 is 25, and 25 plus 1 is 26. So we solved this equation for the value of y. And if you remember, solving an equation is different than evaluating an expression, because when we solve an equation, we have to tell what the variable is equal to. You're finding the value of the variable. All right, we're going to move to number 2. -4 equals 1/3 times some number plus 2. 1/3 times our unknown number plus 2 will give us -4, and we have to find what that number is. So according to our steps, we circle the variable term. Okay, Angel, which one is the variable term?
The variable is 1/3n, I'm sure.
Excellent. 1/3 times n is our variable term. So we're going to keep that there, and we're going to cancel out our constant, which is a +2. And what do I need to do to cancel out a +2? I cancel that with the opposite, which is a -2 on both sides. Then next thing I do is simplify and rewrite everything. So what is -4 plus -2? That's going to give us -6. And now we need to get rid of we need to cancel out that 1/3. Okay, so Aaliyah, how do I cancel out the 1/3?
You have to divide.
Okay, and what would I divide by?
Uh, 3/1.
Okay, when you divide by 1/3, you always divide by, like we divided by 5 at the top, right? Because there was a 5 there. So we divided by 5. But I know what you're saying. When you divide by 1/3, you're actually, when you keep change flip, you're going to end up multiplying by 3/1. So what I'm really trying to do is cancel that 1/3 out to a 1. So that means I need to use the inverse of the 1/3 and multiply it with a 3/1. Because anytime you multiply a number with its inverse, you're always going to get 1, right? Like 7/9 times 9/7, that's going to be 63/63. Because you're multiplying the same two numbers on the top and the bottom. It doesn't matter what the fraction is. If you use the reciprocal to multiply with it, it's always going to make 1. And that's what we need to do to cancel out the 1/3. So if I use 3/1 on this side, that means I also have to use 3/1 on the other side. Okay, so 3/1 times 1/3, that's all going to cancel out to 1 because it ends up being 3/3. And now I know what n, I have n by itself, and then I could just do this math over here. So what's 3/1 times -6/1?
18/1.
Okay, and would that be a positive or a negative?
Negative.
Correct. Okay, so it's -18/1, or we could say our final answer is just that n has to be equal to -18. Okay, questions on this one? To cancel out that fraction, I use the reciprocal of 3/1, and I have to do that on both sides. Okay, I'm gonna move this up to, unless anybody's still writing, what you need to tell me. If you want me to wait. All right, I'm gonna move this up now for example 3 and example 4. Oh, I lost my pencil. All right, so again, the first thing we do is circle our variable term, and then we remove the constant. So let's have Diego. Which one is the variable term? Can you unmute your microphone, please?
The variable term is a/4.
Very good. And which one is the constant?
8.
Okay, is that a +8 or a -8?
A +8.
It looks like it's, well, technically it is a +8, but since I have this negative, the subtraction in front of it, I can borrow the subtraction sign and just call this a -8. And it just makes it easier if you do. Because if I were to keep change the subtraction problem, I would end up with a -8, right? So
Yeah.
instead of writing that keep change part, I can just borrow the subtraction sign and call this 8 a negative. That's a very important step, really important detail, not to miss that. Because now, how do I cancel out a -8?
With a +8.
Very good. So I have to put +8 on both sides. And then I'm going to simplify, and by rewriting what I have left. And when I simplify this side over here, I'm adding -8 with, or excuse me, -5 with +8, which is going to give me +3. And so my last step now, I need to get rid of this 4 to get the variable all by itself. So this says A divided by 4. So what's the opposite of divide?
Multiplication.
Very good. And since I'm getting rid of a 4, I'm going to multiply by a 4. And if you want to, you can put a 1 under that since this side looks like fractions. But 4 over 1 is the same as 4, so I'm just going to write it as 4 on the other side. And that's how these 4s will cancel out right here, because it's like 4 over 4, which is just 1. So now I have 3 times 4, which is 12. And that is my final answer, that A should be equal to 12. So if I look back at my original problem, it said some number A divided by 4 minus 8 should equal -5. So we said A equals 12. So this is what we're saying is true. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. This is my check. And 8 minus 3 is equal to -5. Because again, I could change that, and I see that it's true. Questions on that one? Okay, I'm gonna let you guys try number 4. So I'm gonna go ahead and work this one out. I'm gonna circle the variable term and remove the constant. So my variable term is the 2/5 times x, but when I circle it, I'm gonna include that negative sign in front of it. Because remember, we can borrow that subtraction sign and call our 2/5 a -2/5 x. Okay, and now I'm gonna remove my constant. And simplify. 4 plus -6 would be -2. And now I need to cancel out this -2/5. And I'm going to use the reciprocal or the inverse to cancel that out. Now this is an important step. I'm going to use a -5/2, not just 5/2, because a negative times a negative will give me a +1. Instead of, if I just put 5/2, then it's going to end up being a -1, and I have to do another step that I could possibly forget to do. So negative times a negative gives us +10/10, or just all of this goes to a +1. And then I have to do the same thing on this side. Put my -5/2, put a 1 underneath my 2. And so I could cancel out my 2's right here. Negative times a negative is positive. And so I get +5 for my answer. You could also get +10/2, which still simplifies down to +5. So +5 was correct. Very good. Circle the variable term and remove the constant. Once you practice that, you know, you'll get to a point where you may not need to show that, but for right now, I would like you to just do it so that it gets stuck in your head. Circle the variable term, remove the constant. And if there's a negative in front of the variable term, count that subtraction as a negative sign. Same up here. If there's a subtraction in front of the constant, count that subtraction as a negative sign for the constant.